Okay, and we're live, public. Sound check. I guess I'll do my own sound check tonight. Do, 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 do. Sound check. Sound check. I hope I don't look like I'm sleeping the entire time I'm on. Okay.
You're gonna go upstairs and roll.
Okay. Um, have fun.
Yeah, but
I just gotta do a sound check real quick. Make sure I have.
need to do that for you.
Okay. Nope, I'm good.
Yep.
I am my only viewer. Okay. Anyway, I gotta work on those expressions. Adjust this microphone a little bit. Okay. So, oh, I need to go. I need to do one more thing before I start. I need a new tab, a new window. Go to here, open up this, go here, put the, shoot, what's it called? Link. Put the link to my video on my social medias. Go. Get friends. Done. Mm, 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 mm. Live streaming, reading a timeline of the Reformation. Done. Me for. Yeah. Okay, there we go. Doing that. And oh no, that's OBS. Don't want that. I want my tab. Hooray! Tab. Okay. So this evening I am going to read from the LCMS Lutheran Church Missouri Synod resources page a timeline of the Reformation. And actually, this timeline can also be found in the reader's edition of the Book of Concord, which is where I found it at first. But I thought, hey, it'd be better to read it off of the website so that everybody can follow along and um, read it with me. I do have a couple things I think I'm going to be adding to the timeline, but that's only because they're in the book version of the timeline and not on here, which I thought was kind of interesting. But anyway, so the plan is right now, for this channel is, obviously I want to do readings. I did my reading of, um, the virtues of coffee, of that most sober and wholesome drink known as coffee. Um, but, since it's October, and pardon me, time about that. Since it's October and, the Reformation is coming up, I thought, why not uh, read Reformation texts? I have a couple books here. Of course, I've got my Book of Concord, which has like all the well-known stuff, the Augsburg Confession, the Apology to the Augsburg Confession, um, and stuff like that. But I also have this book, which is Sources and Contexts of the Book of Concord, which is if you if you're a nerd like me, and you have the Blue Book of Concord. I have the two-tone one with the maroon, um, for my reader's edition. But this one is the Sources and Contexts for the Book of Concord, and it goes with the blue Kolb and Nestigan version of the Book of Concord. Um, but anyway, this one has a lot of really interesting things uh, that are not in the Book of Concord, um, obviously, for a lot of reasons. But there's like the Schwabach articles, the Marburg articles, Torgau, uh, confutation of the Augsburg Confession, which is like the response to the Augsburg Confession, which then the apology responds to the confutation. So that's really interesting because I mean, I don't know, like I haven't read it very much, so or I haven't read it very much. I don't know many people who've read the computation. Um, anyway, so there's some interesting things in here uh to read. So I thought I would start off it would be a good start to the series if I started with the timeline of the Reformation to kind of put all of these readings into context. And then I think next time I think I want to read the 99 Theses. Um, I know like a lot of people have probably read them, uh, who are interested in theology, Lutheran theology, and specifically. But I know a lot of Lutheran lay people haven't read them, or if they have read them, it's been a while. So, I think I'll read those. And I think I want to be a little bit less. There we go. A little bit more casual look this evening. Take off my hat. Anyway, so, yeah, I'm gonna go through this timeline, and there's a lot of really interesting things in here. Like the Reformation period is a really interesting time. There's a lot going on. That It's kind of funny how like, okay, I've got these things, these events that have happened in history, but not necessarily have them like lined up with each other. Like I'm like, oh yeah, I know like the basic timeline of the Reformation. Um, but this is also when King Henry VIII is marrying his six wives and murdering them. Like that's happening at the same time that this is happening. And I know that like, oh yeah, of course it is because the English Reformation happens around this time too, and that's all about the, divorce and all that stuff and whatever. I know that's not all of what's happening in the English Reformation, but I'm gonna tear that a little bit. There we go. Maybe I won't get so sleepy eyed looking. Anyway, I know that that's not all that the English Reformation was about, but uh, that's what most people know about the English Reformation. It's like the divorces and stuff. So anyway, let's start our timeline. Um, so we start in the 1400s. So in 1436, and I think most people know this, that the thing that really set off the Reformation was the invention of the printing press by John Gutenberg. Uh, this made printing books much easier, much quicker than writing them out by hand. And so pamphlets were able to be distributed so much quicker. which is how the 95 Theses. Sorry, I said 99 earlier, didn't I? Oh, that's so silly. Uh, silly me. Uh, it's 95. I gave him four more. Anyway, so that's how the 95 Theses was able to be um, distributed so quickly is because of the printing press and the ability to make these pamphlets that could be mass produced quickly and efficiently, and then passed around to people. So we start off in 1436 with the movable type printing press. After that, and this is in the book, but it's not in this internet version of the timeline, and that is in 1440 that I think it said Leif Erikson. Leif Erikson draws the first known map of the New World. Uh, and I really found that interesting, um, because there's all this interesting history we're learning recently about the Vikings and their trips to America and how they discovered America. And so knowing that the first map was made in 1440, uh, so early for for going to the New World, and that it was the Vikings. I think that's really interesting and kind of cool. So then we have in 1444 is the first European slave market, Lagos in Portugal. So we get our the start of the European slave trade in Portugal. And then in 1448, the Portuguese established the first trading post in Africa. Also, a really interesting thing, and I don't know exactly when this happens, but while we're talking about the Portuguese, now the Portuguese, they they traveled a lot. Um, the Portuguese and the Spanish, uh, well, anyway, a lot of people traveled a lot. So they established their first trading post in Africa in 1448, which doesn't sound like such a big deal because, like, Africa's right there, but I guess it was a big deal. You have to have a trading post to get slaves, I guess. Anyway, so then in 1449, Lorenzo de' Medici was born on January 1st. Oh, fortuitous. January 1st. Uh, Very influential, powerful person, the Medicis. So then in 1450 is our next major date. Uh, the Portuguese bring African slaves to Cape Verde Islands, and the words, the Inca Empire flourishes in Peru. Just a second, I'm just making sure. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Yeah, so the Inca Empire is in Peru and it's active during this time. Luther's birthday is not that far away. And I just think that's crazy. To think about like that the Incas line up with Luther. So then in 1451, the Vatican Library is founded. Very important. Wish they would have read more from their library. Maybe then the Reformation wouldn't have happened. I don't know. Maybe. And then also Cardinal Nicholas of Cusa orders Jews in the Netherlands to wear identification badges. I think I want to learn more about that event in history, because that is very weird to me. Um, I mean, I think I knew that World War II was not the first time that had happened. Um, and like there's a long history of persecution of Jewish peoples around the world. But that one's interesting. I wanna look at that more. So 1550. I can't talk. I decided I was going to try VTubing and I can't talk. I'm an idiot. Okay. 1452. Leonardo da Vinci was born on April 15th. Very important. So we get Da Vinci. 1453. Constantinople falls to the Turks. So the Turkish Empire has moved in. They have conquered Constantinople and Turkey. 1455, the Gutenberg Bible is printed. Now I need to look up more about the Gutenberg Bible, because I'm assuming that was in Latin. Had to be in Latin because the first English Bible isn't for a few years now, and Luther isn't born yet, so it can't be in German. So it must be in Latin. But I'd have to look that up because I don't know. In 1456, Pope sees comet, calls for prayer against the devil, Turk, and the comet. The heck? I mean, I get calling for prayers against the devil, and I understand the Turks. Like, okay, yeah, the Turks just took over Constantinople just like 3 years prior. But what did the comet ever do to you? What did the comet? The poor comet. Curse the comet, I guess. Yeah, at least the Pope nowadays is quite open-minded. He at least he'll bless blocks of ice for you. Maybe he'd bless the comet if it was today's Pope. I forget what the Pope's name is. What is the current? Leo. Yes, Leo. Of course, it's Leo. We Lutherans are in trouble. There's another Pope Leo. See, it's Leo the 10th. Let me look at it. No, I was like Leo the 10th. No, that's not right. It's Leo the 15th. Uh, so Pope Leo the 15th. Oh, anyway. Oh, you know what? I can look up the Gutenberg Bible. Hold on a minute. Gutenberg Bible language. Latin. I was right. Okay. So Pope sees comet, calls for prayers against the devil, the Turk, and the comet. Poor comet. Um, doesn't deserve that. 1457, James II of Scotland bans football, soccer, not American football that hadn't been invented yet, and golf for distracting young men from combat training. Okay. 1459, Jacob, I'm going to pronounce it Fugger. Fugger. An imperial banker, was born on March 6th. I have no idea who he is. Maybe we'll hear about him later. 1463, Frederick the Wise is born. Woohoo! Yay, Frederick the Wise. Played by Sir. Dang it. I am so bad with names right now. Luther movie. In the Luther movie, he's played by Sir Peter Ustinov. I didn't even have to look it up all the way. Sir Peter Ustinov. Great actor. Anyway, 1465, Johann Staupitz is born. 1466, Erasmus is born. Boo. 1468, John the Steadfast is born on June 30th. Yay! 1472, Lucas Cranach the Elder, born in Cranach, Oberfranken. Yep, that's the pronunciation. If I mess up pronunciations, I'm sorry. And in 1473, Copernicus was born on February 19th. Cool, cool. All right, 1475, Michelangelo, born March 6th. 1481, the Spanish Inquisition against Jews, Muslims, and heretics begins. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. 1483, we get Raphael, the artist, is born April 16th. The turtle would be born later, I believe sometime in the late 80s, maybe earlier. And then we get the man of the hour. Martin Luther's born in Eisleben on November 10th, baptized November 11th. And Nicholas Amsdorff born December 3rd. 1484, we get Ulrich Zwingli, born January 1st. And Papal Bull condemns witchcraft, inquisitors sent to Germany. So obviously the Pope thinks that the Germans are committing witchcraft. All right. Okay. 1485, Johann. I mean, there are a lot of Johanns. John Bugenhagen, born at Wellen, Pomerania, June 24th. Pomerania. That must be where all the Pomeranians are from. He's a Pomeranian. Puppy dog. Yay. Gregory Bruch, born at Belzig, and Botticelli paints The Birth of Venus. That's that painting with the lady standing in the shell with the two people on one side. Yeah. 1486, John Eck is born November 13th. I think I think I want to read some of John Eck's, what was it called? 300, something ridiculous. 404 articles for the Imperial Diet at Augsburg. That one might take a little while. You know, he liked to write. All right. Let's see. 14. Apologies. Okay. 1487. Diaz sails around the Cape of Good Hope. Oh, shoot. Is Good Hope Cape of Good Hope? Which one is that? South Africa. What's the South American one? Cape Horn. Okay. So, Cape of Good Hope, Africa. Okay, so Diaz sails around the Cape of Good Hope. Hope. 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. He reaches the Americas. The first lead pencils were used. Interesting. Corn is discovered by Columbus. The first known reference to tobacco. This is very important. First known reference to tobacco. So we're getting tobacco. Okay. Hmm. This is in my opinion one of the most important dates to remember that in 1492 we get tobacco referenced for the first time. Tobacco and beer, also coffee, very important for starting a reformation. Can't do a reformation without them. Vital. Ferdinand and Isabella expel 100,000 Jews from Spain. So they have inquisitioned them, and now they're just sending them out. 1493, Justus Jonas, born in Nordhausen on June 5th. Pope divides discoveries in the New World between Spain and Portugal. The Pope has a lot of power. He can decide who gets what in the New World, and that's a big deal. 1494, Charles the Eighth. Man, I need some caffeine. Charles the Eighth of France invades Italy, which one would assume would be a bad idea. But, you know, I don't know how that went. I assume it went poorly. Or well. I'd have to look it up. Suleiman the Magnificent is born on November the 6th. That would be a Turk. Earliest report of Scots making whiskey. Now, see, this is a very important date here. Again, we have tobacco, we have whiskey, and we're gonna get another important event later. 1495, Da Vinci begins painting The Last Supper and completes it in 1497. It took him 2 years to do that painting. I think a painting takes a long time if I spend 40 hours on it or 60 hours. But that man took 2 years to paint that Last Supper. I mean, it is huge, though. It's bigger than anything I've ever painted. And then in 1497, we get William Tyndall, born in Slimbridge, England. Slimebridge? That's a terrible name. I don't want to be born in Slimebridge. It's slimy. Gross. 1496, Michelangelo begins sculpting the Pieta. The first of his, which I wonder which Pieta? The first Pieta, maybe? Because didn't he make 4? There's like 3 finished Pietas, and then the 4th is unfinished. They're beautiful, all of them. Santo Domingo is founded in the New World. Pope Alexander the Sixth gives his son as a hostage to Charles the Eighth of France. Now, see, this is a problem. What's the problem with the sentence? The Pope has a son. That's a problem. He took a vow of celibacy. But he has a son. This is a problem. Okay, 1497. We get Philip Melanchthon, born February 16th. Copernicus makes the first recorded European astronomical observations on March 9th. Dürer publishes Apocalypse woodcuts. Love Albrecht Dürer. He is an amazing artist. And Hans Holbein the Younger, artist, is born in Augsburg. Now, Hans Holbein the Younger, he was an artist. He painted for the court of Henry VIII, and it painted a lot of the famous royal pictures that we have of Henry and his wives. Something I learned like a month ago or so. Learning more about Holbein, which is very interesting. Anyway, born in Augsburg. Savernella is hanged in Florence on May 23rd. I know the name, but I don't know who that is. And John Cabot discovers Newfoundland. 1498, Vasco da Gama reaches India, and the toothbrush is invented. Lovely. All right, here we go. Katharina von Bora was born in Lippendorf on January 29th, 1499. John Brent's born in Weil, Württemberg, June 24th. And Louis the 12th of France seizes Milan. All right, 1500s. We're in the new century. 1500. Charles V is born in Ghent, February 24th. Pope Alexander V, the one with the sun, he proclaims a Jubilee year and calls for a crusade against the Turks. A Jubilee year occurs. Wait, no. Catholic. A Jubilee in Catholicism. This is coming from Google AI. In Catholicism, a Jubilee year is a special occasion of forgiveness, renewal, and grace, traditionally observed every 25 years, originating from the Old Testament concept of time for restoring freedom and property. Catholics believe these years offer a chance to receive indulgences by undertaking spiritual acts like pilgrimages, making confession, and receiving communion, symbolizing a new doorway to God's grace and a renewed journey of faith. Oh, and this year is a Jubilee year. This one right now, 2025, is apparently a Jubilee year. Interesting. Oh, which would make sense if 1500 was a Jubilee year. And of course, 2025, if you're going every 25 years, would be a Jubilee year. Hmm. Anyway, so he calls for a Jubilee year and calls for crusade against the Turks. I'm so sorry. I keep yawning. It's awful. All right. Aldus Manutius, Italian printer who founded the Venice Academy for the study of Greek classics and invented italic type, is born. So, italics. Dude who invented italics, born. And the world population is estimated at 400 million, 100 million of which live in Europe and Russia. 1501, Luther enters the University of Erfurt and receives Master of Arts in Philosophy in 1505. 1502, Michelangelo begins sculpting David, which I have seen, and it is magnificent. Frederick the Wise, Elector of Saxony, founds the University of Wittenberg, and the first portable timepiece is created in Nuremberg. Cool. So we get David, the University of Wittenberg, and the first portable timepiece all in the same year. 1503, John Frederick the Magnanimous is born at Torgau in June 30th, and Da Vinci begins painting the Mona Lisa, which I have been reliably informed by a certain young person that it's terrible. The Mona Lisa. Apparently, he thinks it's terrible. We're working on our art appreciation. 1504, Philip of Hesse is born in Marburg on November 13th, 1505. Pivotal date here. Luther is in the thunderstorm, July 2nd, and he enters the monastery on July 17th. Anne, save me. If you save me, I'll take vows. I'll become a monk. And he did. 1506, Pope Julius II. So we have a new pope. We're not on Pope Alexander VI anymore. We are now on Pope Julius II. Lays the cornerstone at St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. Quite the undertaking, St. Peter's Basilica. Beautiful dome. And Luther takes his final vows as an Augustinian monk in autumn. 1507, Luther is ordained priest at Erfurt Cathedral on April 3rd, and he celebrates his first Mass on May 2nd and begins to study theology. Now, here's the thing that I find very interesting in this timeline. Saying that Luther begins studying theology in May after he's been ordained as a priest kind of makes it sound like he didn't study theology before he became a priest, which is kind of backwards to me. Like, shouldn't you study theology like before you become a priest? Or maybe it's like a specific maybe it's supposed to be like a specific kind of like maybe it's supposed to be a certain or like he goes deeper in his theology studies. I don't know, but it sounds backwards to say that he begins study of theology after he's an ordained priest. Weird. Okay, so then 1508, we get Michelangelo painting the Sistine Chapel, completing it in 1512. And Luther is appointed substitute lecturer in moral philosophy at the University of Wittenberg. So he's using his original degree from the University of Erfurt here at the University of Wittenberg. 1509, John Calvin, boo, born in Noyon, I'm not sure. It's French, so don't pronounce half the sound, so it's Noyon, Noyo, Noyo, France, on July 10th. Luther obtains his Bachelor of Theology degree. This is why Luther has a leg up on John Calvin, because Calvin's being born and Luther has his third degree. He gets that on March 9th and returns to Erfurt. And here we go. Henry VIII becomes King of England. So we have Luther is at has been to Wittenberg. He's back in Erfurt. Calvin's just been born. We had the where was it? John Eck is born. Zwingli is born. So we've got our a lot of our major players here. And then for some reason, Pope Julius II excommunicates the city of Venice. Again, another thing I'm going to have to look up because I want to know why the city of Venice was excommunicated. I've probably heard of why, but I want to know again. 1510. The first African slaves are brought to the New World, specifically Haiti. And Luther is sent to Rome on a mission for the Augustinian order. That will be an eye-opening trip for Luther. And the wheel-lock firearm is introduced in Nuremberg, Germany. So Nuremberg, Germany is doing some stuff. They have made the first portable timepiece, and now they're making the wheel lock firearm. 1511, Luther returns to Wittenberg University to serve as a professor and takes over chair of Staupitz at Wittenberg. 1512, Luther gets his Doctor of Theology degree sometime in October. And then the Fifth Lateran Council begins and ends in 1517. It takes 5 years to have a council, and I, for one, do not want to sit in a council meeting for 5 years. That's too long. Too long. 1513, Ponce de Leon reaches Florida. Does not find Fountain of Youth. Portuguese explorers reach China. Balboa reaches the Pacific Ocean. Pope Leo X. Here we go. That's why I was thinking Leo X. See? Leo X. Leos and Lutherans don't get along. So we've gone through 3 popes, at least. Might have been 4. But we had Julius II was the one, and now we're on Leo X. Begins his pontificate on March 11th. Luther's Tower experience occurs in this year, 1513, and he begins his lectures on the Psalms. 1514, Albert of Brandenburg, Cardinal Archbishop of Mainz and Elector, begins his reign. 1515, Luther begins lectures on Romans. Index of prohibited books adopted at the Fifth Lateran Council. Okay, so they're doing stuff. And here we go. Here's our final important date, going along with the tobacco, the whiskey, and now we have the trifecta with coffee. And of course, there's always beer because it's Germany, but we're going to get even better beer here in a minute. So Erasmus publishes, 1516, Erasmus publishes Novum Instrumentum, first Greek New Testament. And Luther begins first lecture series on Galatians. And then here we go with the beer. The Reinheitsgebot law, Reinheitsgebot law is enacted in Bavaria to assure pure beer. I'm lucky enough that I have a beer company near me that produces beer which follows the Reinheitsgebot laws, and it is delicious. It is my favorite beer. Sponsorship win. And then music printed on engraved plates is used for the first time in Italy. I don't know what that means, but it means something. Maybe it's like the early phonographs? Maybe? I don't know. 1517. Here we go. A big year for the Reformation. Pope Leo X declares indulgence for rebuilding of St. Peter's. So we had the cornerstone laid, and now we are getting the rebuilding of St. Peter's, renewing that building project. Luther nails. I'm awake, I swear. Luther nails the 95 Theses to the castle church door in Wittenberg on October 31st. So this is why we have the October 31st day for the Reformation. And this year, let's see. This year Reformation Sunday will be observed on the 26th of November, or 26th of October. 26th of October will be Reformation Sunday, and then the second will be All Saints Day. And those are both observed because actually on the calendar, the Reformation Day is obviously October 31st, and then All Saints Day is October 1st or November 1st. So, they're observed on those Sundays because they don't land on those Sundays this year. I don't know if they ever land on a Sunday. Probably. It would really mess up the church calendar. Oh my gosh. Anyway, so that's why we have Reformation Sunday on in October. So, we get Hernandez de Cordoba reaches the Yucatan, and Hernando Cortez reaches the Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan, uh, also known as Mexico City. 1518, our boy Philip Melanchthon comes to Wittenberg University. We get the Heidelberg Disputation in April, and the process against Luther begins in Rome. Luther appears before Cardinal Cajetan in Augsburg from October to November. Luther appeals to the General Council and refuses to recant. Frederick the Wise, very wise man, refuses to surrender Luther in December, and forks are first used at a banquet in Vienna. So now we have forks. Very important. Use of forks. So this is another big year, 1518. Obviously, we get the Heidelberg Disputation. We get Luther in front of Cardinal Cajetan, um, and of course the forks. I'd love to read Heidelberg Disputation. I don't know. I don't have it physically, but I probably can find it online. So it might be something that is read. But again, we're gonna do 95 Theses first, um, because that comes first. All the way back in when? Oh yeah, 1517. So the year prior. Yeah. So 95 Theses we'll do first, and then Heidelberg, maybe if I can find it and it seems like something interesting to read. Everybody's gonna think I'm bored because I keep yawning. It's just that time of day. I'm getting old. Oh my gosh, 10 o'clock. Up past my bedtime. 1519, Leonardo da Vinci dies, May 2nd. Sad. Not Leo. Uh, Ulrich Zwingli begins preaching on the New Testament. That that we could do without. That we could do without. We get Charles V elected the Holy Roman Emperor, June 28th. And we get the Leipzig debate between Luther and Eck in July. 1520, Matthias Flacius, born March 3rd. Raphael, the artist, dies April 6th. Raphael, the turtle, still not born. Leo X issues a papal bull, Exsurge Domini, giving Luther 60 days to recant or be excommunicated on June 15th. And Lucas Cranach the Elder creates the first portrait of Martin Luther, an engraving, and it's a very well-known engraving of Luther. Luther burns the papal bull and a copy of canon law on December 10th. So Luther says, "Hey, yeah, Leo the 10th, this is what I think of your papal bull. Burn." And maybe we'll read that or in the copy of canon law, I think, is going to be pretty long, but we'll see what we can find. And then Montezuma II, the last Aztec ruler, dies, which is really an understated way to say that. Um, anyway, aha, and then we get chocolate brought from Mexico to Spain. Ah, that's another piece of the puzzle. Although it's coming quite late in already into the Reformation. Although hmm, nobody quite knows it yet. They just know that there's this upstart monk. In 1521, Luther is excommunicated by papal bull Decet Romanum Pontificum on January 3rd. Hans Holbein the Younger paints the Dead Christ. Oh, that's a beautiful piece. I mean, it's really creepy and he's dead, but it's gorgeous in what it says about death and about Christ and the resurrection. Like it's just really cool. Okay, and here we go. Luther appears before the Diet of Worms and refuses to recant. April 17th to the 18th. You have to say Worms as Worms because it is German, and we don't want Worms, Germany, to be confused with Worms, Nebraska, because they are two very different places. And Luther definitely didn't go to Worms, Nebraska. He went to Worms, Germany. Charles V issues the Edict of Worms, declaring Luther a public outlaw and criminal and making it illegal to have Luther's books. On May 25th, Suleiman conquers Belgrade in August. So the Turks are moving once again, threatening the Holy Roman Empire and its allies. Frederick the Wise hides Luther at Wartburg Castle for 11 months. And Luther, during that time, translates the New Testament into German. That takes him from December to March 1522. Philip Melanchthon publishes the first Lutheran dogmatic text, Loci Theologica. Theology. Loci Theologici. Maybe. Don't know. Also, we'll put that on the list. Although, again, I think that's a longer one, so I'll have to take that into consideration. All right, here's an interesting one. Anabaptist Thomas Müntzer begins preaching against infant baptism. Now, if you know anything about Thomas Müntzer, you also know about the siege of Münster, not to be confused with Münzer, but the siege of Münster. Very sad, but also rather interesting. There's a lot of ups and downs in that story. Um, very interesting story. Hernando Cortez conquers Mexico, which we knew he was doing because Montezuma II died. So Montezuma and Hernando Cortez, that's all happening at the same time as the Edict of Worms, and all these other things. So hmm, terrible. Luther returns to from Wartburg on March 6th of 1522. He preaches the invocavit. I do not know Latin. Invocavit sermons against excesses of the Zwickau prophets. Uh, I'm not sure who the Zwickau prophets are. Maybe they're related to Zwingli. I'm not sure. The ban on Luther is lifted. Magellan's ship, the Victoria, completes circumnavigation of the globe on September 6th. And Luther's translation of the of the New Testament is published in September. Martin Chemnitz, the second Martin, is born in Trunenbrützen, Brighton? Not sure. November 9th. Luther writes his personal prayer book, the predecessor of the Small Catechism. Charles V established Inquisition in Spanish Netherlands, and over 2,000 are killed. These Inquisitions are really, really awful things that the Holy Roman Empire did. Ulrich Zwingli, again, we can do without this man, but we must have him, begins Reformation in Zurich, and the Bible is printed in Spain in Hebrew, Greek, Latin, and Arabic. And again, we must. Aww, our girl is here. In 1523, escaped nuns from Nimschen, including Katharina von Bora, arrive in Wittenberg on April 7th. Yay! Heinrich Voss and John Esch, first Lutheran martyrs, are burned at the stake in Antwerp on July 1st. Which is really unfortunate. I say. And then, I mean, it's terrible. It's terrible when people die. And Luther's translation of the Pentateuch is published in the summer. Luther writes his first hymn, and Luther writes the baptismal booklet. All right, here we go. Here we go. Peasants' War begins, led in part by Thomas Münzer. And Münzer is going to be arrested and put into jail. But don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. His cult will be taken over by someone else, someone worse. Luther's translation of the Psalter is published. Luther resumes lecturing in Wittenberg, and he stops wearing monk's clothing. And October, the Acht Liederbuch, the Book of 8 Hymns, first Lutheran hymnal, is published by John Walter and Luther. And John Staupitz dies December 28th. All right, 1525, we get George Blaurock is rebaptized by Conrad Grebel. Marks the formal beginning of the Anabaptist movement. The Anabaptist movement is again related to Münzer. Münzer? Yes, Münzer. And is Thomas Münzer. And again is going to be involved in that siege of Münster. Frederick the Wise dies on May 5th. John the Stabfast, brother of Frederick, becomes elector of Saxony. Yay! Yay! And on June 13th, Luther and Katie are married. Hooray! Luther's first German Mass is used December 25th, just for Christmas. Luther's personal prayer book is revised and reissued. William Tyndale visits Luther in Wittenberg. I didn't know that. I didn't know that William Tyndale and Luther actually met. But here we go. Influenced by Luther's translation, Tyndale's English translation of the New Testament is printed in Ferrums. Over 18,000 copies eventually smuggled into England. Very cool. The first Lutheran ordination takes place in Wittenberg. And Luther works on a new church order for Saxony. In 1526, Albert Durr paints the Four Apostles. I don't know that piece right offhand. I'll have to look it up. Diet of Speyer grants German princes right to establish religion in their territory. Hooray! Church visitation begins to assess needs of congregations. Hans Luther is born on June 7th. Suleiman captures all of Hungary and Battle of Mohacs, August 29th. Plague strikes Wittenberg. The Luthers turn their home into a hospital. Luther writes A Mighty Fortress. Mutinous troops of Charles V sack Rome in May, and Elizabeth Luther is born December 10th. 1528, Patrick Hamilton, Lutheran martyr, executed February 29th. Jacob Andre, born in Weiblingen, March 25th. Albert Durr dies on April 6th. Elizabeth Luther dies on August 3rd. So she only lived a year. Less than a year. She lived 6 months. 8 months. 9. Melanchthon prepares visitation articles for inspection of Lutheran pastors and congregations in Saxony. Luther participates in one visitation in October. Luther writes his Confessions concerning Christ's Supper. 1529, Second Diet of Spire, April, results in the issue of Protestio, hence giving rise to the label Protestant, which the Romanists apply to all who agreed with Luther. Luther publishes the Large Catechism, April, and the Small Catechism in May. So we get the Large Catechism and Small Catechism in the same year. In Magdalena, Luther is born May 4th. Luther, Melanchthon, and Zwingli meet for the Marburg Colloquy, unable to agree on the Lord's Supper, October 2nd through the 4th. And that's one of the articles I think I want to read is the Marburg Colloquy. I have it in uh, this sources and contexts of the Book of Concord. The Turks unsuccessfully laid siege to Vienna. This stops the Turks' advance into Europe. Fortuitous. Is Vienna the one that was excommunicated? I don't remember. Have to go back and look. The Schwabach articles, again, another one I have in here, written by Luther and others, presented October 16th. I must yawn again. Marburg articles, written by Luther, again, I have those, and Suleiman and his Turkish armies lay siege to Vienna. Again. Torgau. Excuse me. Another one I have in here. So 1530, we get the Torgau articles prepared by Luther, Melanchthon, Bugenhagen, and Jonas. John Eck writes the 404 articles. Again, I have it in here. Luther stays at Coburg Castle from April to October. The Augsburg Confession, presented to Charles V at the Diet of Augsburg. So Luther stays at Coburg. He doesn't actually go to the Diet of Augsburg, for multiple reasons. But one is that he's afraid that would kill him. And then the Roman Confutation is presented August 3rd. And I really want to read the Confutation. I think that'd be interesting. So 1531, David, I'm not even going to try to say his name, is born in Ingelfingen, February 26th. The formation of the Small Chaldaic League is February 27th. The Augsburg Confession and Apology are published April and May. Second edition of the Apology, the Octavo edition, is published in September. Ulrich Zwingli dies on Swiss battlefield at Kappel am Albis on October 11th and learns that he is wrong. Goes to heaven and learns that he was wrong. I'll be nice. Martin Luther, the son of Martin and Katharina, is born on November 9th, and a comet appears that will eventually be known as Halley's Comet. 1532, John the Steadfast dies on August 15th, and his son John Frederick the Magnanimous becomes elector with John Ernest. Religious Peace of Nuremberg is signed. Again, we have something happening in Nuremberg. Suleiman, repulsed at Vienna, goes no further. Again, he's stopped at Vienna finally. Luther publishes an admonition to prayer against the Turks. And then in 1533, Paul Luther is born on January 28th. Ivan IV, the Terrible, becomes Russian Tsar at age 3. And the English King Henry VIII is excommunicated on July 11th. 1534, Hans Luth publishes the first edition of Luther's complete German Bible. By 1574, Luth had printed over 100,000 copies of the Lutheran Bible. Ignatius of Loyola this is a separate thing. Ignatius of Loyola founds the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits, on August 15th. Oh boy, the Jesuits. First complete edition of Luther's Bible commentaries are published. Henry VIII declares himself head of the Church of England, and Margaretha Luther is born on December 17th. 1535, we get Luther beginning his last major lecture series on Genesis. 36, Luther, Melanchthon, and Englishmen Edward Fox and Robert Barnes, not the lawyer on YouTube, agree to complete Wittenberg Concord, rejected by Zwinglians. John Calvin publishes the first edition of the Institutes of the Christian Religion, and the martyrdom of William Tyndale in Belgium occurs on October 6th. Norway becomes Lutheran. Minnow Simons assumes leadership of the Anabaptists, a generally not wise decision. Henry VIII allows the English Bible in England. John Frederick, remember this is the Magnanimous, commissions Luther to prepare articles for the meeting of the Schmalkaldic League on December 1st. 1537, Melanchthon writes the treatise on the power and primacy of the Pope for the Schmalkaldic League. That is, I believe, in the Book of Concord. Look, make sure that I'm right. Power and primacy. Let's see. Creeds, Augsburg Confession, Apology of the Augsburg Confession, Small Called Articles, Power and Primacy of the Pope. Yes. So that's in the Book of Concord. Another important Reformation piece, not written by Luther, written by Melanchthon before he went crazy. Lutheran's small called articles are published. 1539, first volume of Luther's collected works appears, completed in 1558. Saxony and Electoral Brandenburg formally become Lutheran. Woohoo, more Lutherans. But funny that Saxony took so long, or not took so long, but that Norway became Lutheran before Saxony did. That's very interesting. And the Catholic Counter-Reformation begins in earnest. 1540, Melanchthon's treatise on the power and primacy of the Pope is published. He publishes a revised Augsburg Confession, the Verata, Martyrdom of Robert Barnes, Lutheran confessor, in England on July 30th. Wittenberg holds the first celebration of the anniversary of the Gutenberg Press, and the Society of Jesus, Jesuits, confirmed by the Pope in September. 1541. DeSoto reaches the Mississippi River, May 8th. The Council of Regensburg attempts unity between Rome and Lutherans on justification. The compromise of justification is rejected by John Frederick and others. Good on Nicholas von Amsdorf is consecrated as Bishop of Zeitz by Luther. Calvin initiates the Reformation in Geneva, which he establishes as a city of God. Oh. Magdalena, let's see, no, 1542. John Frederick the Magnanimous becomes the sole ruler of Saxony. Magdalena Luther dies on September 20th. Portuguese traders, first Westerners to reach Japan. Now they reached China before they reached Japan. Oh, but they were going around Africa, not South America. So that makes sense. 43. John Eck dies on February 13th. A lot of things in February. Copernicus on the revolution of heavenly bodies, describing a sun-centered universe, is published, and then he dies in May. Territory of Braunschweig becomes Calvinist. Boo. Spanish Catholics begin to burn Protestants at the stake. Boo. 1544, another diet at Speyer appears to grant major concessions to the Lutherans. Appears? First church to be built Lutheran, Torgau Castle Chapel, dedicated by Luther on October 5th, and Sweden declares Lutheranism to be the state religion. 1545, Council of Trent's first sessions, 5th edition of Luther's Bible, and the last one published under his supervision. First complete edition of Luther's writings in Latin is published. 1546, Luther preaches his last sermon on February 14th. Oh, so Valentine's Day. Interesting. And Luther dies at Eisleben on February 18th. He's buried at the Castle Church in Wittenberg on February 22nd, which has since then had electricity installed, and they're very lucky that they have a sustainable electrical source. Because the electricity in the castle church is in fact actually run by the electrical current produced by Katie and Luther rolling in their graves every time that a sermon is preached. And the electoral palatinate, not sure what that is, becomes Lutheran. Hooray! Okay, 47. The small Celtic League is defeated by Charles V at the Battle of Mühlberg on April 24th, and John Frederick the Magnanimous is taken captive in battle and exiled to the Weimar. Wittenberg surrendered to save itself and the lives of John Frederick's wife and sons, and Luther's Small Catechism is first book printed in Lithuania. 1548, the Augsburg Interim, published May 15th. John Frederick the Magnanimous founds Jena College. Aphrodisiac controversy begins. What? What the heck? There was an aphrodisiac? No. Oh my gosh. It's not aphrodisiac. Oh my gosh. Ideophoristic. Idiophora. Ideophora. Ideophoristic controversy begins. Oh, I really am tired. It's aphrodisiac. The Lutherans are arguing about aphrodisiac. No, no, they're not. It's the ideophoristic controversy. How many other things have I misunderstood because I didn't know the word or mispronounced it? A lot. Let's move on. The Leipzig interim is prevented by Maurice in December. And in 1549, Francis Xavier introduced Christianity in Japan, and Matthias Flacius moves to Magdeburg on November 9th. Now I'm going to scroll down here and just check and see how much longer this thing is, because this is long. There's a lot still. Um, so I think what I'm going to do at this point is just maybe pick out some highlighted things that I think um I think are interesting. So let's see. So 1550 we get Calvin writes the Consensus Tigurinus to merge Zwingli and Calvinist views of the Lord's Supper. Um Let's see. Katerina von Bora dies in Torgau on December 20th. Let's see. And then John Frederick the Magnanimous dies March 3rd, 1544. Peace of Augsburg allows Lutherans equal rights in the Holy Roman Empire in 1555. Let's see. Philip Melanchthon died in April 19th, 1560. Here we go. Here's where we start to see Chemnitz doing writings. So that's in 1561. Um, Chemnitz publishes The Lord's Supper and Judgment on Certain Controversies. The Council of Trent finally ends, 1563. And that only took them, what, 10 years, 20 years. And that's when the clothes are painted on the nude figures on the Sistine Chapel. Michelangelo, Shakespeare, born, Calvin dies in 64. Oh, there's an interesting one. Andreas Vesalius' death sentence for dissecting human bodies is commuted in exchange for his pilgrimage to the Holy Land. Interesting. Um, Examination of the Council of Trent by Chemnitz is published or begins writing, completed in 73. Chemnitz and Andre began work on uniting Lutheran territories and cities in 68. We have a new pope, Pope Pius V, and by 1570. Let's see. Torgau Conference by Elector Augustus I to begin Lutheran unity efforts. Formula of Concord, another in the Book of Concord. The Epitome. Solid Declaration is written. Chemnitz publishes Two Natures in Christ. Really want to read Chemnitz works, although again, that's very long. Probably not on here, but probably just on my own personal reading list. Book of Concord is published, 1580. English defeat the Spanish Armada, 1588. Let's see. Descartes is born, and then 30 Years' War is when it ends. So anyway, I think that was a very enlightening um, review of the kind of the timeline of the Reformation, and all the things that are happening um, concurrently in the world during the Reformation. It's a very interesting and very busy time. I think we could say that about any time period that there's a lot going on everywhere in the world. Um, I mean, if you're looking at the entire world, there's something going on every day, right? Um, hence the news. Um, anyway, I hope you found this interesting. I know I did, and I learned a few things. Definitely have some things that I want to look up and learn more about, like or comment. Um, anyway, yeah, I'll be back to do some Reformation readings. I'm not sure. I haven't gotten a schedule down yet. Right now, I'm just doing this when I can. Um, but I think the next thing I'm going to read is going to be the 95 Theses. So I will be back for that. Have a blessed rest of your day, and thanks for stopping by.